number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a conversation between an assistant librarian and a woman who wants to use the internet in the library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning. I'd like to register to use the internet in the library.
Do you have a library card?
Yes, I've been a member for 6 months, but I've never used the internet services before.
The woman already has a library card, so yes has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. I'd like to register to use the internet in the library.
Do you have a library card?
Yes, I've been a member for 6 months, but I've never used the internet services before.
No problem. Can I have your full name, please?
Linda Jane Milton.
So, Milton is your surname?
Yes.
And Linda, L-I-N-D-A?
Well, no, actually, it's L-Y-N-D-A.
Linda, Jane.
And, Jane isn't spelt J-A-N-E either. It's J-A-Y-N-E.
Okay, got that. Thank you. Now, where do you live, Linda?
Unit 15, 35 Maximilian Way.
That's in Whitfield, right? I have a cousin who lives in that area.
Yes, Whitfield.
And the postcode is 7755.
Not quite. You've got it round the wrong way. It's 5577.
Whoops. Okay, moving on now. Do you work or are you at home during the day?
Well, both actually. I work as a nurse, but I'm on permanent night shift.
Oh, I see. In that case, we won't put down your home phone number because I'm sure you don't want to be disturbed when you're trying to sleep.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You can always leave a message on my mobile if you have to contact me. I have it turned off when I'm sleeping, but I regularly check my voicemail for messages.
And that number is?
0412 214 418.
Good. Now I'll need to see some form of photo ID. Have you got something with you?
Yes, just a minute. Here's my swipe card for the hospital.
Thank you. I just need to make a note of the number. AZ1985331.
Is that all you need?
Just one more thing, your date of birth. But I can get that from the card. One moment.
Look, I'm afraid you haven't copied it down correctly. I was born on the 25th September 1975.
What have I written? Oh yes, I see it now. I've got the 25th of the 8th month, but that would make it August. Thanks for spotting the mistake.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now, listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Well, that's the application form done. Now, I wonder if you'd mind taking part in a survey we're doing.
That's fine. What do you want to know?
Basically, we're trying to find out why people access the internet. I mean, what would you be using it for? Social networking, I suppose.
I don't really think so. I haven't got the time for something like that. But I do want to keep in touch with friends and family, both here and abroad. So I'd mostly be making use of my email account.
I see. A lot of students come in here to do research. Is that something that you might be doing?
I think the internet is a great tool for research, but it's not something that interests me at the moment.
What about checking out a new job?
A lot of my friends use the internet for job hunting, and they say it's the best way to look for a new position. I'm quite settled where I am, though. You can get access to the other classifieds, can't you? Trade and exchange, that kind of thing?
Yes, and I'm told it's a very popular way of buying and selling these days.
Well, I'll definitely be using it for that.
Thanks a lot. Now, do you have any questions?
Is there a charge for the service?
It used to be free, but we've decided to set a one-off payment of $15 for the initial registration.
Oh, that's not bad at all. One more thing. Is there a time limit for each session, like half an hour or something?
Oh, it's better than that. One 60-minute session per day. Quite generous, really, but we're very strict about it.
I'd rarely spend more than 45 minutes on the internet at any one time, so that'll be more than enough. Thank you.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear part of a talk about Mount Rushmore given by a tour guide. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mount Rushmore. To start your visit, I'm just going to give you a brief account of the history of the memorial before letting you roam about on your own. I won't keep you long, okay? Mount Rushmore is South Dakota's top tourist attraction and features the heads of 4 United States presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Each head is 18 meters tall, which is taller than the heights of 11 people combined. The sculptor initially wanted to depict the presidents from head to waist, but due to a lack of funding, the construction had to stop before this vision could be realized. In total, it cost the government $1 million to sculpt the heads at Mount Rushmore. Before the construction of the presidents' heads, the mountain was just bare rock and forest, attracting only a few hikers a year. The new carving at Mount Rushmore has become an iconic symbol of presidential greatness and has appeared in works of fiction and other popular works. The sculpture has also worked perfectly as a way to develop tourism, which was its intended purpose, and now attracts over 2 million people a year. The original plan was to carve the presidents' faces into the granite pillars known as the Needles. However, the sculptor soon realized that these rocks were too eroded and delicate to support such a large sculpture. Instead, he chose to locate the carving at Mount Rushmore due to its grand appearance and brightly lit rock faces that experience maximum exposure to sunlight throughout the day as a result of the southeast orientation. Upon seeing Mount Rushmore, the sculptor declared, "America will march along that skyline." The name of Mount Rushmore also has an interesting history. The location was originally known as the Six Grandfathers. However, during an expedition in 1885, the mountain was renamed after Charles E. Rushmore, a prominent New York lawyer who joked that his annual treks to the mountain had earned him the right to have it named after him. 40 years after the mountain was renamed, Charles E. Rushmore donated $5,000 towards the sculpting of the president's heads, the largest single contribution. In 1927, the construction works started and 7 years later was complete with no fatalities. So that's the history for you. If you'd like any more information, please feel free to ask me questions, or you can soak up the information from our fantastic guidebook.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now I'm going to give you a plan of the site, and I'd just like to point out where everything is so that you can explore everything for yourself. We're currently standing at the entrance, which is marked with the arrow on the map. If you follow the trail up to our left, you will find the information centre. There's a great photo booth there where you can have your photograph taken with Mount Rushmore in the background for a fee of only $10. What a great souvenir! In front of us is the refreshment centre, where you can help yourselves to coffee, locally grown tea, and a delicious selection of cold drinks and biscuits. Be sure to stay hydrated as it can get really hot up here. To our right, not far up the trail, is the gift shop. Here we sell copies of the guidebook, and it's also the perfect place to pick up some small souvenirs for yourself, your family and friends. Now, further up the trail, behind the gift shop, is a big stone building with a workshop. This is where all of our souvenirs are made by hand, which you can purchase in the gift shop, like I said before. Some are even carved from pieces of rock taken from Mount Rushmore itself. If you carry on walking up the trail past the workshop, you'll find our state-of-the-art visitor centre, where you can find maps of the walking trails here at Mount Rushmore. Now for the real treat. After you have walked past the visitor centre, you can follow the trail up to the left, which will take you to our wooden shelter. From here you will have the best view of Mount Rushmore that there is, an experience not be forgotten. Right, if anyone wants a guided tour, then I'm starting at the information centre. If you'd like to follow me, this way please.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. In this section, you'll hear a conversation between a tutor and a student about the strategies of note-taking. Now you have half a minute to read questions 21 to 29. Listen to the tape carefully and answer questions 21 to 29. Hi, Mr. Smith. I wonder whether you can spare several minutes with me. Sure. What's your name, please? John Murray. Good, John. What can I do for you? Well, I am a freshman in the communication faculty. I quite enjoy the life here, except for the difficulty I have in the lectures. You know, I find it difficult to take notes when I listen. If I take notes on my notebook, I can't concentrate on the lecture. But I feel frustrated after the lecture if I don't write down anything. As we know, note-taking is a complex activity which requires a high level of ability in many separate skills. At least 4 important skills are needed. 4? I don't expect so many. I think that needs 1 or 2 skills. Firstly, you have to understand what the lecturer says as he says it. That means you should try to develop the ability to infer the meaning of unfamiliar words from the context. You cannot stop the lecture in order to look up a new word or check an unfamiliar sentence pattern. Yes, that puts the non-native speaker like me under a particular severe strain. Often I may not be able to recognize words in speech which I understand straight away in print. So the ability of inferring is important. Of course, you won't always be able to do this successfully. You must not allow failure of this kind to discourage you, however. It's often possible to understand much of a lecture by concentrating solely on those points which are most important. But how do I decide what's important? Well, that's in itself another skill I'd like to tell you. At first, the most important piece of information in a lecture is the title itself. If this is printed or referred to beforehand, you should study it carefully and make sure you're in no doubt about its meaning. A title often implies many of the major points that will later be covered in the lecture itself. It should help you therefore to decide what the main point of the lecture will be. Besides the title, what should I pay attention to during the speech? A good lecturer often signals what's important or unimportant. He may give direct or indirect signals. Many lecturers, for example, explicitly tell their audience that a point is important and that the student should write it down. Unfortunately, some lecturers who are trying to establish a friendly relationship with the audience are likely on these occasions to employ a colloquial style. He might say such thing as, "This is, of course, the crunch," or "Perhaps you'd like to get it down." Although this will help the student who's a native English speaker, it may very well cause difficulty for the non-native speaker. You'll therefore have to make a big effort to get used to the various styles of his lectures. I see. You mean I should get used to some colloquial expressions of the lecturer and write down the points he recommends us to take? That's right. And it's worth remembering that most lecturers also give indirect signals to indicate what's important. They either pause or speak slowly or speak loudly or use a greater range of intonation, or they employ a combination of these devices when they say something important. So, I should be aware of this and focus my attention accordingly. If I can catch the main points, how can I write them quickly and clearly? Good question. That's a problem that most students find hard to solve. Having sorted out the main points, you have to write them down. In order to write at speed, you may find it helps to abbreviate. You can also try to select only those words which give maximum information. There are usually nouns, but sometimes verbs or adjectives. Writing only one point on each line also helps you to understand your notes when you come to read them later. I see. The last but not least skill to learn is to show the connections between the various points you've noted. This can often be done more effectively by a visual presentation than by a lengthy statement in words. Thus, the use of spacing, of underlining, and of conventional symbols plays an important part in efficient note-taking. In this way, you can see at a glance the framework of the lecture. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. I think I'll employ the methods in the next lecture. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture about issues involved in the management of the growth of cities. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Now, a key issue in the ability of cities to grow is the question of housing. However, quality is as important as quantity here. But that isn't to say that this is easy to guarantee, and the development, or at least the spread, of many modern cities is marked by the sprawl of slum or shantytown housing. Governments are, of course, keen to address this, but the tendency to demolish them has often proved disastrous, as it doesn't solve the problem unless satisfactory replacements are ready for the inhabitants. What I'm saying is that suitable housing projects have to be lined up to accommodate these otherwise displaced people. And suitable is the key word here. All too frequently, there isn't real consultation, only token gestures. If the residents aren't fully involved, they are unlikely to find the resulting development appropriate to their needs. People need to feel reasonably independent, and strategies for providing accommodation schemes work much better if an approach rooted in self-help is applied. People value things more when they have been part of bringing them into being. At the same time, residents can't do everything for themselves, or not well enough anyway, and so governments need to accept that a number of services will always have to be laid on. These would include electricity and water and so on. From the other side, residents need to feel able to commit. Migrants are essential to the growth of cities, bringing rapid increases in population, skills and income. But they need to have a sense of security, of long-term commitment to the city, if they are to invest money in building or buying houses. Developing this sense of commitment isn't straightforward, and it takes time. It's complex and involves several factors. People need to feel they belong, and unfortunately too many governments fail to appreciate that community values are a crucial component of that. Sadly, there are too many housing schemes which don't work. People drift away, or the whole place becomes crime-ridden. It's easy to be wise after the event, but it is worrying that a lot of housing is put up without analysis having been carried out to examine how much employment is going to be available for people. But I don't want to labour the negatives too hard. Such difficulties as there are challenges, and challenges that can be, and often are, overcome. And cities are, I believe, a good thing. Urbanisation, the process of developing cities and the societies that comprise them, may not be everyone's dream, but it has a huge impact on the economy, and also benefits each and every person's freedom. Furthermore, the sheer volume of people means that work can be differently distributed. In villages, people need to be multi-skilled in order to be autonomous, but in cities, you can see the evolution of a variety of specialist activities, and this means people live in a more sophisticated way. It's not only tangible phenomena. There are all sorts of other equally important benefits too. Residing in cities brings us face to face with many different ways of thinking or going about things, and this increases our degree of understanding, something which is hard to measure in scientific terms, but which surely makes better people of us all. Right, well, now I'd like to turn our attention to the suburbs.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Let's go.